大家好，今日要同大家介紹嘅就係呢一位嘅講者呢，係英國係好有地位嘅一位講者嚟㗎。咁而家今日要講嘅呢，就係 AI 嘅泡沫就已經爆破緊。咁其實呢個話題呢，響係西方呢，就好多人都已經係講緊㗎啦。咁就呢一趟我見到呢個嘅視頻呢，就係相當好精簡。咁我就係介紹俾大家聽下。OK，好啦。
We are back, and we are joined now by Ed Zitron, host of the Better Offline podcast and publisher of the Where's Your Ed At on Substack. Ed, thanks so much for coming on the show today. Sorry.
嗱，呢個視頻佢係有中文嘅係字幕，咁就大家係咯，中意聽英文得，中文就睇中文又得，完全冇問題。
Ghost.
On
It's
Ghost.
I don't
I'm
support
so
Substack.
sorry.
No, it's
I'm
okay.
so-
Everyone makes this mistake. It's okay.
It's okay. I mean, our newsletter is on Ghost too, right? And
Oh, yeah.
I never even remember. But yes,
It's not
so
a big deal.
That's the one that isn't, I guess, funded by a bunch of Silicon
Isn't
Valley
recommending things with swastikas, no.
No, yeah, that's helpful.
嗱，呢啲係好典型嘅英國嘅係small talk 嚇，開始 small talk 先啊。
Ed, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Of course.
So I know you're asked this every single day, so I will ask this question, but then amend it. You're probably asked every day, when is this damn AI bubble gonna burst? So my question to you is not when, but how is it going to burst?
呢個主持問佢嗰個 AI 嘅泡沫係點樣會爆破？佢話唔係問佢係幾時爆破啦，佢話實爆破就係點樣會爆破。咁啊，聽佢點講啊。
So thanks to Oracle, we are now set up for a very obvious collapse, which is, so yesterday it was announced that Oracle had, well, it was the day before yesterday during their earnings, where they missed on everything. They said they had $317 billion of new customer revenue incoming over the next, from financial year 2027. Turned out that $300 billion of that is from OpenAI, a company that loses billions of dollars a year and has never had more than $16 billion in the bank. So Oracle's stock jumped 40% and a bunch of others jumped with it. So just to be clear also, it came out from the Financial Times a couple of weeks ago that OpenAI's non-profit conversion is going to be delayed until next year because Microsoft is not really moving on the negotiations. So it's a very complex way of saying that this will...
呢個成個 AI 嘅結構咧，喺美國咧，喺中間嘅大家都知道就呢個 OpenAI 啦。咁亦都咧，好多人會聽到就係咧，最近咧，甲骨文咧，同埋係 Microsoft 啊、微軟啊呢個 OpenAI 咧，就係搞咗一個叫做係 circular transaction，呢個就係係大概係30個 billion 嘅3000億啊。咁就呢個，但係其實咧裏邊咧就係大家啲錢係左袋右袋啊咁樣嘅。咁就呢個就喺 Oracle 咧就係喺呢個問題嘅中間啦，所以佢話開始就係講話多謝 Oracle 甲骨文就係幫佢哋將呢個嘅泡沫篤破嘅。好啦，我哋繼續聽啦。
And because OpenAI will probably die. And no one likes this story. No one wants to talk to me about it too much. And
佢已經一針見血就話咧 ，OpenAI 就好大嘅可能性會係接埋嘅，會係死嘅。
Tech media right now, because when you really think about it, everything lies on top of OpenAI. They're the largest compute client in the world. They're $10 billion of Microsoft's Azure cloud revenue.
其實美國呢個 AI 嘅 industry 係全部都係建於喺 OpenAI 上邊嘅。
Represent pretty much all paying users of generative AI, 20 million paying customers, 5 million business customers. Though I add, 500,000 of those are from the Cal State University, 50 million annual contracts, so about $2.50 a user, losing a bunch of money, just like OpenAI tends to. In any case, OpenAI does not have the money to pay this contract. They're meant to start paying Oracle about $30 billion in 2027. These servers are not even in the data centers. There's only an eighth of them built. So Oracle neither has the capacity ready to serve the revenue, and OpenAI doesn't have the money. And the thing that no one seems to want to say is, where the hell are they getting it from? So,
Right.
and the answer is there is literally no
其實 OpenAI 係使咗好多錢，但係咧嗰個收入係好低嘅，佢哋手上淨係得叫做16個 billion 嘅現金嘅啫。
not enough venture capital to fund this. Venture capital will run out. All of it, the dry powder of available venture capital will run out in 6 quarters at this current rate. And OpenAI, to do anything close to what they need to do, will need more than is currently available.
呢度佢話嗰啲 venture capital 創投嘅基金咧嘅資金咧將會係用晒，即係冇呢啲創投嘅資金入去 OpenAI 或者甚至其他好多嘅呢啲 AI 嘅項目啊。
Even if they move into private credit, it will not be sufficient. So the answer is there's a good chance that OpenAI just does not convert to a for-profit entity. And if they don't by the end of the year, their current funding round from SoftBank gets cut in half. If they can't convert at all, they will die because they cannot go public. And at that point, if OpenAI cannot go public, they turn into a functional Ponzi scheme where
OpenAI 唔係上市公司嚟㗎嘛，佢哋嘅最終目的就係要上市啫嘛。如果佢上唔到市咧，就完㗎啦。呢、個成一個好似佢哋叫個龐氏嘅係Ponzi scheme，全部都係建於空嘅嘢。
the only way for any investor to cash out is for other investors to enter the system. And this is not an accusation of fraud or anything. That's just how it will work if they can't convert, because they are this weird non-profit hybrid. So yeah, I think sometime in the next year or two, OpenAI simply falls over and dies and gets pecked to death by carrion birds. And once that happens, everything else falls apart because OpenAI represents pretty much all of the revenue. They make more than everyone else combined. There's probably $40 billion of active revenue in generative AI, which is nothing. And
Yeah.
OpenAI represents, I think, like a third to a half of that. They represent all of the compute. They're most of Microsoft's compute. They're going to be most of Oracle's revenue, if any of that was true. OpenAI disappears. There's not that much business here. It's a fugazi. It's all made up. It's genuinely disgusting.
全部都係糖水滾糖魚啊！佢哋嗰個美國嗰個 Magnificent Seven 呢個七大姊妹啊，你點叫都好啦。其實佢哋嗰啲咁樣嘅係咯嘅生意都係糖水滾糖魚喺裏邊，錢就使咗好多落去啦。
Yes, and that is, but all of this fugazi kind of runaround stuff is just there to create more investment. I mean, that's what's been
Yes.
agonizing about this whole discussion is that so much of the AI discussion, even the guys going on podcasts to talk about how it's going to take over the world and be like robots. That's how great our product is. It could take over the world. Anyone want to invest? It's all been so much, billions and billions of money that's gone into this and basically wasted because it could disappear, as you say, overnight because they cannot create right now a model that is profitable.
所以而家係咁多錢投入咗去 AI 咧，可以係 overnight 一夜之內可以全部係變為係冇嘢嘅，因為佢哋根本就做唔到咩出嚟啊！你一路聽落去啊。
Well, it's not just the lack of profitability. It's not just the fact that these companies in general don't make much money.
就係咧，呢啲公司係賺唔到錢，係呢啲 AI 基本就係賺唔到錢嘅，但係使咗好多錢落去嚇。
I mean, Perplexity, AI startup, search engine type company that has raised $300 million in the last 2 months, 2 separate rounds. They spent over 140% of their revenue last year just on compute. These companies do not function in the way that regular startups do. And on an operational level. The whole point of cloud software, the whole reason that tech has its valuations is that these are asset-light businesses where the biggest costs are salespeople and customer service. Generally, infrastructure has not been a problem. It is insane, but tech has now taken on the burden of classical industrialization without any path out. And what's crazy is I did an article called Why Everybody's Losing Money on AI last week. It's not clear that even the people providing compute, as in the people building the data centers with the GPUs in them, are making any profit. And if they are, it's going to take years. But on top of all of this, This crap don't work. It doesn't do that much. It's not that useful. These people going on podcasts and saying, oh, it's going to do this. Oh, China, not to insult the previous guest, but China's building powerful AI. Are they? Are we talking about generative AI? Because when it comes to large language models, so the underlying tech behind like ChatGPT and Claude and all that, that's not powerful. It's not doing much. And indeed, a ton of other AI stuff.
佢呢就係講話嗰個叫 large language model 啊，LLM 其實咧係做唔到乜嘢嘅。呢個係有一位係AI 嘅教父，亦都講話其實咧 LLM 啊 large language model 大語言嘅模型其實係呢條路係錯嘅，因為佢做唔到人類可以諗到嗰個思想嘅方式嘅，佢只不過係估嗰個啲字。一路係點，下一粒字係點樣，下一粒字係咁樣，但係要用好大嘅能源去做呢一個咁樣分析，所以呢個係基本係唔 work 嘅。
That isn't making that much money, but is far more interesting, is unrelated to this, but they want to conflate it because the actual products that are underneath, well, that are built on top of large language models are kind of crap. They're good for Casey Newton of Platformer. His best he's got was to say, oh yeah, we should take this seriously. AGI is coming because it turns out that ChatGPT can do most kinds of homework. That's not why we send children to school. We don't send people to university to do homework so that the homework's complete. It's not like there's a goblin we feed the homework to. We do it so that people learn. It's just, it's fantastical, ridiculous, and ultimately dangerous.
And can we just even back up to how we got to this point here? Because so much of what you're talking about, the way that the model is completely not profitable, was a lot of how tech and some of these like gig economy companies were spoken about. And I know it's different, and I want you to explain how that's different, because I know, like, is Uber even making money? Like, I feel like they're still, I'm not sure, maybe it was like last year or 2 years they started making money, but like a lot of these tech companies started operating at a loss. And
一個調查報告，呢個大學嘅調查報告就係95%嘅呢啲 AI 嘅公司係揾唔到錢嘅，甚至嗰個七大嘅七姊妹嘅咧都係輝瑞係最揾到錢，但係其他嗰啲全部都係揾唔到錢嘅，所有全部都係一個我哋叫佢 hype 嚟嘅。
And some have gotten over the hump, especially because, you know, they're
即係我哋講係揾唔到錢，係因為係 AI 嗰一範咧係揾唔到錢。
They're now some of the most highly traded companies on the stock market and things like that. But this, you lay out how it's different in your piece, if you don't mind explaining to our audience.
So it's very simple. So Uber, Amazon Web Services is a comparison point that people make. They shouldn't. Over the course of 10 years, Amazon Web Services cost about 10% of the global investment from AI in the last 2. So Amazon Web Services is nothing to do with it. It was also cash flow positive within a couple years. Uber, I think they burned about $30 billion between 2019 and 2022. Now, most of that was between R&D and sales and marketing. They just burned a bunch of money to get people out, and then were taking a loss on drivers too. They cranked up the prices, horrible labor abusers. But the classic mistake here, and this is actually, I'm not saying you're doing this, but a lot of people posing that Uber was just like this are doing so in bad faith. Because the thing that nobody wants to admit is that Microsoft, Amazon, and Google paid for OpenAI and Anthropic's infrastructure. So people can say, oh, OpenAI has raised 60 billion or what have you. Anthropic's done the same. Oh, and they look, Uber burned a lot of money too. No, the actual total amount, when you really look at how much Amazon and Google handle Anthropic, Microsoft handles OpenAI, they've put between them hundreds of billions of dollars of infrastructure just for these companies. So it's not anything like Uber. The timeline is smaller, and on top of it, Uber's costs were not running the cars. This would be if like Uber's cars were run using giraffe blood, right, and you had to blow them up at the end of every ride and build a new car by hand. And I sound like I'm being facetious, but the economics of this are completely and utterly insane. And they are getting worse because people have been saying, oh, the cost of inference is coming down. It's actually going up. There's a story by Christopher Mims about this in the Wall Street Journal. It's everywhere now. So this crap is getting more expensive to do the same things. It's still doing the same crap. And what they like to do is say, well, look, it's going up on the benchmarks. The benchmarks are made to make the models look better because you can't test these things on actual things that people do because they cannot do them.
Well, we have some data showing that at least these like larger firms here are starting to agree with you, because there are all these promises of how AI can help basically replace a workforce. But this is an article in Fortune magazine. AI adoption rates are declining and kind of have been for these larger firms who are beginning to realize this since basically the middle point of this year. Explain why that's happening, Ed.
嗱，佢哋講其實咧就係咧嗰啲 OpenAI ChatGPT 啊，一路不停出話啊呢一期一期啊，越嚟越醒啊咁。其實好多嘢咧佢哋係冇醒到嘅。而另一個最重要嘅問題咧就係AI 做出嚟嘅文字啊，同埋計出嚟咧係裏邊咧大概有10%以上或者50%以上咧係錯嘅。喺呢啲係佢哋嚟講係個 AI 嘅叫做 hallucination， 呢個叫做幻象。因為 AI 咧佢哋咧係被訓練到咧，如果佢哋有啲嘢佢哋係唔識嘅咧，佢就會作出嚟嘅。作出嚟嘅時候咧就好似好有信心咁嘅。所以你普通嗰啲你個用家你唔知咯。如果你唔知道原來裏邊好多假嘢，有啲叫 hallucination 咧，你就會照用咧，你就好大鑊㗎啦！即係其實咧 AI 做出嚟嘅嘢咧，你要花好多時間，你要抄咗嗰啲錯嘅嘢出嚟嘅，所以其實係重大問題嘅。所以而家有好多譬如喺微軟啊，或者係Google 啊，佢叫我哋係用佢拱我哋去用 GI， 但係佢嗰度講明咧話 AI 咧唔係100% 準確嘅，所以要叫我哋自己係小心。所以呢個咧係相當搞笑嘅。所以咧有好多而家大公司就好似佢講啦，呢個嘅圖表講，而家好多大公司已經開始減少用 AI 啦，因為佢哋知道咁多年都仲係有嘢錯嘅，同埋呢個錯係唔會係好轉嘅。因為點解咧？因為而家佢哋 AI 係需要有好多嘢、好多嘅資料去咗去訓練嗰個 AI 啊嘛。但係而家其實咧喺西方度咧好多嘅嗰個 Internet 上邊嘅資料其實都係 AI 做出嚟嘅，而裏邊亦都有好多嘢係錯嘅，所以咧其實就係咧 AI 就係喺嗰啲錯嘅資料度訓練自己，所以錯上加錯。所以而家咧好多大公司微軟啊、Google 啊，就盡量想攞你啲用家嘅資料去訓練 AI。呢個係我覺得就相當係唔道德㗎。
Well, it's quite simple. It doesn't do enough. Like the enterprise will, and there was a paper that came out of MIT NANDA as well that said 95% of generative AI integrations have 0% return on investment. Now, within that, there was this statement that's very valuable, which is that adoption is high in the enterprise, but disruption is low. These products cannot learn because generative AI has no brain. They do not think. They do not have human thinking. They are just probabilistic models.
嗱，呢個就好似我講嗰個叫做 LLM 呢個係大語言嘅模型咧，其實佢哋唔係諗嘅，佢哋唔識諗嘢。其實佢係一個叫做係估下一個字係最大可能性係乜嘢，咁佢就一串字咧就做篇文章出嚟俾你嘅。咁計嘅都係所以裏邊咧係唔會有100%，同埋佢哋係好唔靈活㗎。所以其實 AI 咧最可以做到咧，就係一啲好短嘅圖形。呢啲短嘅圖形咧，即係好細嘅圖形咧，亦都佢個做出嚟佢都會唔同喎，所以你都唔可以依靠佢喎。咁樣咧，你同埋咧可以做到係音樂，所以而家咧網上面係好多假嘅音樂㗎，佢哋做得唱啊樣嘢都做得好，因為呢啲音樂咧冇話啱同埋唔啱㗎嘛。咁但係咧個問題就係呢個咧就扼殺咗好多音樂藝術啦。
And as a result, they are limited in what they can do to pretty much the same things. They summarize, they can generate text, they can generate images, they can sometimes successfully generate a PowerPoint, but even then, you can't do it every time. And at some point, I imagine enterprises rolling out these big...
冇錯啦，AI 問題就係、好啦，你甚至你做圖形啊，啲乜嘢，佢次次都可以唔同嘅做出嚟，變咗你就係相當難控制。
integrations, spending all this money, are going, okay, does this do anything we actually need? And at some point, why would they continue? You'll note that we're 3 years into this and we still don't have any really tangible examples of anyone doing anything interesting or large scale disruptive. I mean, within a few years of the iPhone, we had tens of millions of smartphones. You had entire organizations adopting smartphones across the board. You had bring your own device companies growing literally just to provision iPhones and similar devices for corporate clients. You had growth within the enterprise that you could map out year by year. We have a line trending down. That's not good. And that people really would love to say, oh, well, the dot-com boom, the line went down too. Nuh-uh. There was no line go down when it came to the growth of cloud compute. And Uber, completely different consumer company, not relevant, but nevertheless, their burn was still significantly lower over time, and they were also a necessary product. I think they're horrifying labor abusers, but still, the product made sense. But in generative AI, the returns are not there on a financial level, but the actual product still does functionally the same thing it did 2 years ago. Since GPT-4, there really hasn't been a significant thing that's changed. Even reasoning models, it's just kind of putting a hat on a hat at this point.
You speak a little bit about in one of your pieces on your site, NVIDIA, and how this bubble could burst if their growth begins to slow. You point out there's this thing called like the Magnificent Seven, basically these big 7 companies that make up so much of the U.S. stock market's value. And you posit that NVIDIA is the weakest of these 7 at this point. Can you explain why that's the case and what these weaknesses are?
So the funny thing is that NVIDIA is the only...
呢個好有趣啊！佢話係喺個美國呢個叫7姊妹啊，呢個最大7大公司，反而輝瑞係最弱嘅一個公司啊！但係而家輝瑞係賺最多錢，但係咧輝瑞佢話其中一間最弱嘅公司啊！我哋睇下。
company I think that's making any real profit from this. They are doing so well to the point that the market has a fundamentally unhealthy relationship with them. NVIDIA's revenue, 88% of it comes from data center revenue, which is selling these GPUs and the associated bits with them. Of that revenue, around 42% of it comes from 6 other companies. Really, mostly 4. Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Meta. In all 4 of those cases, they're making bugger all revenue. But in this case, the market has come to expect NVIDIA to grow anything from 70 to 150% every single year, year over year, every quarter. They must grow that much. And then you look at it right now, and they slowed to a ridiculously high, but not high enough, 55%, I think it was, year over year. It's unsustainable. There is no way that NVIDIA is just going to be able to go, okay, we'll sell 70 billion, then 100 billion, then 150 billion dollars worth of GPUs. And if you're worried, you should be more worried, because that's actually what needs to happen to keep this rally going, because nobody's making any real money.
Yeah, and I think just for people that don't know, can you explain NVIDIA's place in the market and why they have it cornered? Just even like, spelling it out very simply, just because like what GPUs are and what their product is, and even if you don't mind explaining.
佢一個幫我解釋係點解係輝瑞點解會而家係一個好弱嘅一個位置，係被 corner 咗，逼埋一個牆角咧咁樣啊？呢個大家睇下。
Like Taiwan's role in also all of this.
So Taiwan's role will be with TSMC, which is basically the chip manufacturer. They do everything. TSMC does way more than GPUs. They do more than this. NVIDIA makes a GPU, a graphics processing unit, but the ones that they sell a lot of are these AI GPUs, and they're not kind of like the ones you put in a computer. They're much bigger. I think you put 72 of them in a rack. You need these massive cooling rigs and servers to make them run. And they run something called CUDA, C-U-D-A. Now, this language is exclusive to NVIDIA GPUs and is functionally the only way to run generative AI. There are other examples, but no one else can scale like NVIDIA, and indeed, no one can really run CUDA. So you either have to make a large language model specifically for another language and another GPU, which is incredibly hard to do. China's trying to do this right now. Or you can just buy from NVIDIA, which is what everyone's doing. The problem is these GPUs are insanely expensive. We're talking 50,000 to 70,000 a piece, and you need to buy 72 of them each rack, and you need to buy a lot of racks. And so you're in this situation where there's this massive expenditure, this insane amount of money you're spending, and then you install them and they immediately start losing you money. And based on SemiAnalysis's analysis, they cost about $2 an hour to run, which may not seem too bad when you're making, I don't know, $3 an hour, but that's if you're at 80% or higher utilization, as in it's being used for 80% of the time. Most of them are not, because the demand is not there for generative AI services. And where it is available, well, it's with Microsoft and OpenAI, and all of that business is being taken. So I believe that most people that are actually installing these GPUs at scale are losing tons of money. And their customers, when they get these generative AI services, are going, why do I care? And I believe most of OpenAI's actual existence within the market is not legitimate. It's based on a 3-year-long marketing campaign by a tech and business media that's lost the plot, and a society and markets that needed a new growth pick. They needed a new thing to point at and say, this is the future. Except
and
this
big tech was behind it too, right? They're deeply invested. And another thing that you write in your piece about what could happen if the bubble bursts is these big tech companies abandoning some of this AI stuff. Can you speak a little bit about that and why that could be on the horizon?
So all of these companies, these big tech companies, have been Microsoft's spending $80 billion of capital expenditures this year, Amazon $105 billion of capital expenditures. The market quite liked this when the market had the brains of babies and went, ooh, AI's everywhere. I've heard AI mentioned a few times. I like that number go up. Here's the thing. Now that the market is saying, wait, is there any actual return on this investment? They're starting to say, well, is your revenue going to keep growing? Because this whole time, and this is where the business media really screwed up, every time these companies saw revenue growth, the media would say, and that proves that AI is working. Now, what's missing from all of these earnings is any actual explanation of how much money they're making from AI, because they're not making any. Well, that's not true. Microsoft's making $13 billion, and they stopped reporting their AI revenue in January for some reason, projected to make $13 billion this year. $10 billion of that is from OpenAI's compute, which is sold at cost on an already money-losing thing. Meta expecting to make $3 billion. An analyst predicts that Amazon will make $5 billion from AI. This is not a lot of money for companies that make over $100 billion a year. Microsoft Azure made, I think, 70-something billion in the last year and all that. This is chump change. And as you have shown, adoption is going down. The only reason we're seeing this spike right now is honestly, it's not quite Enron, but it smells a little bit about it. The Oracle saying, yeah, we got $300 billion of revenue coming May. It's going to be amazing. Yeah, it's from one company that loses billions of dollars a year, that doesn't have any money right now and needs to convert to a for-profit. But yes, everyone go nuts. It's going to be great. I just hate it because in the end, retail investors, so regular people that are investing with this, who have been lied to, who believe people in the media, who believe senior officials that say AI is so powerful.
嗱，呢個佢講就係咧，其實咧，我哋啲普通嘅投資者一路都係俾呢啲咁樣嘅 AI 大公司係講大話，對我哋講大話，話AI 會點？你成日聽到哇 AI 就會轉改變成個世界，你會點？但係其實係乜嘢都做唔到嘅佢哋嚇，所以開始好多公司開始就減少用 AI。其實最近亦都有個新聞就係話咧，而家好多嘅電腦公司亦都開始請翻嗰啲嘅程序員啊，即係嗰啲 coding 啊，因為佢哋發覺原來用 AI 寫嗰啲 coding， 因為其實佢哋用嗰啲 AI 嚟寫啲最基本嘅 coding 啫，唔係最高級嗰啲啊，最基本嘅程序嘅啫， 都裏邊有得錯處，同埋裏邊嗰啲架構咧係好真係好叫做好 rigid 嘅，係佢唔識改變嘅，冇彈性，同埋咧裏邊係有好多嘅安全漏洞喺裏邊，所以而家有好多嘅大嘅電腦公司都開始請翻去人嘅嗰啲叫做寫程序嘅人㗎啦。
Don't do their own research, that are not actually being given the full story, are going to invest heavily in NVIDIA, heavily in Oracle, and get their asses kicked when this falls apart.
And NVIDIA, like, just in terms of its lack of sustainability, I mean, there are going to be new technologies and new different, like, GPUs that might be more efficient. Like,
Maybe.
I mean...
But the thing is, even whether there is or there isn't, NVIDIA will survive this. None of these big tech companies are dying, which is why, by the way, there will be no government bailout. There's nothing to bail out. None of these companies are going to die. Oracle, however...
佢話呢啲公司到佢哋死嘅時候，或者呢個係AI 嘅泡沫爆嘅時候咧，呢啲公司都唔會死嘅。佢話呢啲大公司只不過係嗰個業績啊樣嘢，嗰個同埋嗰個股票市場會死啫。咁就所以唔會需要咧政府抌錢落去 bail out， 即係救呢啲咁嘅公司嘅。
is actually in systemic problems because they are taking on $38 billion of debt, I think, just to complete one part of the compute to serve OpenAI, a company that doesn't have the money. Right. NVIDIA generally, because of that coding language CUDA, and it's a coding language and series of libraries and such to run compute on GPUs, they started working on that over a decade ago. Everyone has been trying to work that out and crack that nut. I don't think anyone's going to do it, but I don't think it really matters because ultimately this boom has come from building capacity for a revolution that never even started arriving. And I think everyone, the sources of information that people rely on, everyone's been let down.
佢呢度講話呢個 AI 咧，其實就係一個叫做 revolution， 一個革命，但一路都冇嚟到嘅。即係講使好多錢，講好多，但係冇嚟到嘅，係唔會嚟㗎。
Well, if people read your newsletter on Ghost, Where's Your Ed At, you'll not be kept in the dark. So I really appreciate your work on this, Ed. Obviously, we'll put a link to your newsletter, Where's Your Ed At, in the description below, wherever people are listening to or watching this. Ed Zitron, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
多謝各位收睇，咁啊呢個希望大家會有一個係新嘅認知，對於 AI 呢個風險啊，呢個將來啦。OK， 咁就如果你喜歡嘅就請係點讚，係subscribe，多謝晒。